I bet, how could, you know, as Muslims we say, don't we? We say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. When we walk into a room, we walk in with our right foot and we say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah. When we get on a bus, Bismillah, we drink our water and we say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If we don't, we should do that. It's not just a nice habit, it's a good thing for Muslims to do that because it stops you from doing bad things. If you're in the habit of saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before you do things, you're not going to take a glass of whiskey and say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Are you? You won't, seriously, you won't. And if, you know, if you're missing your prayers and you're not reading Quran, all of us want to be good. Deep down in our hearts, we want to be good people. It's just that the shaitan is very, very clever. So clever. And in the Quran it tells us he whispers into our ears. He whispers and tells us that we're no good. That we're not clever, that you shouldn't really be at university anyway because you're stupid. You know, what are you doing here? You'll never be as good as your brother. You know? He even gets your dad to say it. That's how wicked the shaitan is. Gets a father to say that to his boy. You're not as good as your brother. You're lazy. You're not as pretty as your sister. The shaitan does this. And the shaitan leads us astray. And the shaitan takes us into the mall in, what do you call it here, the shopping centre. And the adhan sounds. And our friends, he gets our friends to say, oh, we've got plenty of time. You know, we can pray later on. And in the morning, when it's time for Salat al-Fajr, the adhan sounds, or the time comes, and we go, oh, well, yeah, I'll pray later on. I won't bother you, go back to sleep. That's the shaitan at work. And the shaitan tells us, well, I'm young, I can drink, I can do whatever I want. Well, of course you can do whatever you want. But it's like poison that you're drinking. It's poison. I don't mean for your body. I'm not a doctor. I don't know about the physical. I don't mean that. I mean you're poisoning your heart. And you're poisoning your soul by these things. Because they're dragging you down and making you not the person you want to be. If I'm touching nerves, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry if I'm touching a nerve with anyone. Because it's very, 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 very important. We don't judge people. As Muslims, we never judge people. And in reminding our brothers and sisters that what they're doing is wrong, we're making no judgment. Who are we to judge anyone? Who are we? You know, we don't get up to pray ourselves, so who do we think we are judging other people? But we have a duty, because they are. Prophet Muhammad والسلام, chose the name brothers and sisters. He didn't just one day think, oh, that sounds a nice name, we'll call them brothers and sisters. He chose it because that's what we are. We're brothers and sisters. And we owe it to our friends. If you've got a friend and he's not praying, you have a duty to help him to pray. You know, ring him up in the morning. Come to the mosque with me. I've prayed already. No, you've not prayed already. Get up. You know, your sister. If your sister is kind of hanging around with the wrong type of people, tell her. Not in a judging way. You're nothing to judge anyone. But out of duty and out of care and love, tell her, you know. So, sex, drugs, rock and roll, they're all kind of mixed into the same sort of thing. Prophet Muhammad was a man. He wasn't a god. He wasn't. The Christians have come to see Jesus as a god out of great love for him. They loved him very much that eventually they began to see that he was more than human. He was like a god. And the Muslims almost fell into that trap when Muhammad died. They said, no, he couldn't die. Allah wouldn't let him die. But he was a man. He was a great man, the greatest man ever to have lived, but he was a man. And so what does that teach us? It teaches us that, well, I'm a man. And if he could live this Islam very beautifully, well, so can I. You know, I'm nothing special. I'm just an ordinary fellow. And Islam is so simple that we can all live that. You know, the words I use to describe Islam are, Islam is beautiful, and Islam is gentle, and Islam is sweet. Unfortunately, many Muslims don't know that. They've never found out how beautiful and gentle and sweet Islam is. All they've learned from growing up is that you've got to do this, and you've got to do that, and you mustn't do this, and you can't do that. You know, well, no one wants that kind of, no one wants that. No one wants a negative religion, a religion where you just can't do things. What kind of life is that? But the first book I wrote is called, instead of calling it, I didn't call it An Introduction to Islam, or Understanding Islam, or Get to Know Islam, or Everything You Wanted to Know About Islam. I called it Gardens of Delight. Because I took the name from the Holy Quran, where it talks about the paradise as being like gardens of delight underneath which rivers flow. Because this life now, not tomorrow, but now today, can be like gardens of delight if we live as Muslims. You know, I don't give advice, so I wouldn't advise anyone. I've made enough mistakes myself not to give advice. But one thing I would encourage, whenever we have troubles in life, and we often do, and when life is tough, and when maybe we're mixing with the wrong sort and we don't know how to get out of it, the Prophet ﷺ told us the most beautiful thing. He said that in the last third of the night, Allah Almighty comes down to the lowest of the seven heavens. Allah Almighty, the creator of the heavens and the earth, and he looks and is there anyone there asking something from me? Because I want to answer him now. Is there anyone there? If you want something, set your alarm. There's no one around to be embarrassed about, you know? If you're in the situation now where you don't go and pray most of the time, you know, you won't feel shown up by going off and saying, oh, sorry lads, I can't come probably tonight, I'm going to the mosque. People will think you're mad to do it so quickly. So get up on your own in the middle of the night and pray. Just let your head touch the ground in prayer and cry. Tell Allah, I'm sorry for the way I've lived and I want it to change. You know, drugs. When I was a teacher, I'll tell you a story about Kevin. I was teaching one day. I was in my office, and I can't remember. I was head of something, head of year or head of whatever. And this boy was brought to my office. He was called Kevin, West Indian lad. And the teacher who was teaching him said to me, "This boy is no good. He's been doing this, and he's been doing this, and he's been doing this. Isn't that right?" Yes. And he's doing this, and he's very bad, and nothing will ever come of it. Isn't that right? Yes. And I don't know what to do with him at all. Can I leave him with you? I said, just leave him here, and that's all. Thank you very much. So he went, he closed the door. Kevin, I said, what's wrong? So he said, I'm stoned out of my mind. And he'd been messing and being naughty in class because he'd been taking all sorts of stuff, and he was being very naughty. Okay? These kind of things that we do, smoking stuff and taking stuff and drinking stuff and so on, they make us behave in a way that we would regret. In Egypt, we're having a special day in fact on Valentine's Day, whenever that was, it was not long ago. And instead of calling it Valentine's Day, the good Muslims in Egypt called it a day of dignity. And on that day, they were going to extol the role of women, how beautiful women are. And they were going to talk about how dignified the poor are. And there's nothing shameful about being poor. It's not your fault. You don't feel guilty about being poor. So we need to think about our own dignity. What do people think about us? You know, what would good people say about us if they saw us behaving this way or that way? How much better that they can see us being good people. You know, it's good to be good. And being good and avoiding all these other things brings happiness. It brings great happiness. People of Egypt, where I live, they're very poor, very, very poor. They're good Muslims, alhamdulillah, but they don't have all the things that you've got. But they're the happiest people I've ever met. They're the happiest people. All the time they're saying, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. You'll say to them, how are things? Alhamdulillah. How are things?